Now, take a look at the sign over here. It says 15 items or less. You've probably seen something like that in your local supermarket. It should actually say 15 items or fewer. You use the word fewer for things that you can count and the word less for things you can't. Intuitively, you actually know this. You would say I had less water today because you can't count water. Maybe you can count cups of water. Can't count water, but you would say I had fewer carrots because you can count carrots. Cool random grammar fact. Well, that was the bad news. Bad grammar everywhere. But you know what? Here's the good news. On the ACT, only very specific English skills are tested. So in this episode, we're going to do an overview and talk about exactly what's tested so you'll know what you're going to see on test day. First, we're going to take a quick look at the directions. Then we'll look at the basic format of the English section. And then we'll take a look at the usage mechanics questions on the English section. Last, we'll look at the rhetorical skills questions that you'll see. So we've talked a lot about how important it is to know the directions ahead of time. So first, for the English section, let's talk about the instructions and the format. Here are the instructions. They're really complicated, but I'll go through, circle what's important, and then I'll show you some examples later of exactly what I mean. So let me skim through this quickly. There are 5 passages on the subject test. You should read each passage once before answering the questions. In order to answer correctly, you may need to read several sentences beyond the question. And there are 2 question formats within the passage. In one format, you find words and phrases that have been underlined and assigned numbers. I'll underline that. So underline and assign numbers. That's the first format. So you'll see something in your passage, it's underlined, there'll be a number underneath it, and it'll match to a question that corresponds with that number. And let's see, so these numbers correspond with sets of alternative words and phrases. And then from the sets of alternatives, you need to choose the answer choice that works best in context, keeping in mind whether it employs standard written English, whether it gets across the idea, whether it suits the tone, things like that. Second format, you're going to see box numbers, referring to sections of the passage as a whole. And then you'll need to answer a question based on the entire paragraph or passage. So, just to summarize, always 5 passages, and you've got underlines and boxes that are numbered. Let's look at an example, because I'm sure you're thinking, what's she talking about? Here it is. So, here's an example paragraph from an English passage. And you see how we've got our first line here. That day, my best friends give me my first pet, Charlie, a red-tailed boa constrictor. And you've got a word underlined. Sometimes it's a whole sentence, sometimes it's a whole phrase. And you've got alternative choices here. And you see how the number corresponds to the underline. And you can choose, is there a better word that should be here or a better phrase? Or, no change. Maybe it should stay the same. Now, we're not actually going to answer this question now. We'll do it a little later. This is just so you see an example. Okay. Next, so that was the underline questions. Next, we've got the box questions, right? We talked about those too. You see how at the end of this whole paragraph, you've got a box, and it's numbered. Here we have number 18, and it corresponds to a number 18 question that's going to ask you about the entire preceding chunk, whether it's the passage, whether it's the paragraph. They'll tell you in the question. So here, which of the following provides the most logical ordering of the sentences in paragraph 3? And you see how you got some choices here, and you can actually